We're all here because we're excited about the work of Dr. Paul Farmer, whose presence with us tonight is an honor and a thrill. But this event is not just about Paul Farmer. This event is a community call to action, a call to each one of us and to us collectively to respond to the vast needs of so many whose suffering has not been erased and forgotten, because we are listening now, and we now know that we can make a difference too. As great as he is, and as big as we make him, Paul Farmer is only human. This is not Paul Farmer's job or burden to carry alone. This event is about us. As a community, we could do something tonight that we have never done before on such a scale. We could come together and start to make this dream of healing the world real. If you are moved by what you experienced tonight, as you've been moved by Tracy Kidder's book, I hope you will take action by giving as generously as you possibly can. Not tomorrow, but right now, tonight, before you leave. Then take with you the wisdom of Nkosi Johnson, a boy who died at the age of 12, but not before he had addressed the International AIDS Conference as the longest surviving child born with AIDS in South Africa. He said, "Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are." Thank you. Now, Ginny McIntyre, Concord Select Person, will introduce Paul Farmer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of Concord and beyond. My name is Denny McIntyre, and I'm a member of Concord's Board of Selectmen. On behalf of the Selectmen and the town of Concord, it's our great pleasure and honor to welcome Paul Farmer to our high school and town, and to say how grateful we are for this opportunity to hear about his important work. I also want to thank Becky Dewey for asking me to introduce Dr. Farmer and for giving me a chance to read a little more deeply about his life so far. Many of you, I know, have read Mountains Beyond Mountains, and if you're anything like me, have done a little soul searching on how we're spending our own lives, perhaps lulled by the myth that we individually cannot make too much of a difference in the face of world-sized problems. Whether we are white liberals or compassionate conservatives, whether we think globally and act locally or simply get exhausted thinking of how we can help, Dr. Farmer gives us a good kick in the pants and sets us an example of one man who has seized the issue of first-class health care for the world's poorest by the throat and is not letting it go. In any event, a few biographical details which I'm sure are familiar to most of you. Dr. Farmer is the product of a slightly unorthodox upbringing with parents who clearly valued education and adventure. Graduating from Duke and with a medical degree and PhD from Harvard, Dr. Farmer is a medical anthropologist and physician, specializing in infectious diseases, particularly diseases that disproportionately affect the poor. He is chief of the Division of Social Medicine and Health Inequalities at Brigham and Women's Hospital here in Boston, is a professor of medical anthropology in the Department of Social Medicine at the Harvard Medical School, and is medical director of the Clinique Bon Sauveur in Haiti. More than 20 years ago, as a means of directing resources from the first world to the third, he founded Partners in Health, a foundation that provides direct healthcare services and conducts research and advocacy for those who are sick and poor, working in Haiti, South and Central America, Russia, and Roxbury. Infectious diseases, like the tuberculosis that killed Concord's favorite son, Henry David Thoreau, we think of as diseases of the past, yet these powerful diseases still march through the poorest corners of the world, our own 21st century world, and addressing the persistence of these avoidable, curable diseases is one of the prime goals of Partners in Health. Dr. Farmer is the recipient of an armful of humanitarian and professional awards, and in 1993 was awarded a John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation grant as a MacArthur Fellow. in recognition of his work. If that's not enough, Dr. Farmer is also the author or co-author of over 100 scholarly publications, including the recently published Pathology. Let me read the mission of Partners in Health because it gives you an idea of the enormity and goodness of their work. Their mission is, quote, to provide a preferential option for the poor in healthcare by establishing long-term relationships with sister organizations based in settings of poverty. Partners in Health strives to achieve two overarching goals: to bring the benefits of modern medical science to those most in need of them, and to serve as an antidote to despair. We draw on the resources of the world's elite medical and academic institutions and on the lived experience of the world's poorest and sickest communities. At its root, our mission is both medical and moral. It is based on solidarity rather than charity alone. When our patients are ill and have no access to care, our team of health professionals, scholars, and activists will do whatever it takes to make them well, just as we would do if a member of our own families or we ourselves were ill. Dr. Farmer will tell you more about the work of Partners in Health. The thing that strikes me in reading about him and reading some of his extensive writing is that he's such an unusual combination of talent. A gifted and highly capable clinician and diagnostician with a passion for medical justice and an overarching belief that access to first-rate medical care is a basic human right, together with and fueled by an energy level that knows no bounds. Plus which, the one thing it seemed he didn't learn in medical school is that necessary emotional separation between doctor and patient. I'm contrasting him with the protagonist of Ian McEwan's new novel, Saturday, a neurologist who is described as, quote, too experienced to be touched by the varieties of distress he encounters. His obligation is simply to be useful, close quote. Dr. Farmer's approach is different, and he responds on a human level to each patient, tailoring his treatment to the particular medical, social, and economic circumstance that patient presents, as if he were a member of the family. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Farmer.
Thank you. When I walked through the door, I thought, oh my God, I'm back in high school auditorium. It was not a good feeling. And but I thought this would be very good fodder, you know, to get things rolling and make you all laugh. And then, of course, you all stood up and made me embarrassed. But it's really a privilege to be here. I was at the Kennedy School at a little community college down the road where I went to medical school. Some of you have heard of it probably. It may be older even than Concord, I'm not sure. And some of you were there. I actually saw some people tonight earlier who had been there at this talk. And I went back to Haiti the next week. This is at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. And I went back to Haiti the next morning. And there is this guy from Arkansas, not Bill Clinton, another guy. This guy from Arkansas who I met because I was at the Brigham one day and my beeper went off. The Brigham is the hospital, a big teaching hospital where I work in Boston when I'm up here. And my beeper went off and I answered and said, I don't think I was even, I probably said Paul Farmer, infectious disease, which is a very charming way to greet people, I would say. And he had a very heavy Arkansas accent, very similar to the fellow I just mentioned. And he said that he'd read an article that I'd written in a very obscure Jesuit publication called America. I mean, they don't think it's obscure, no offense to them, but it is pretty obscure, let's face it. You know, the circulation of People magazine is like 3 million people, and the circulation of the best Jesuit publication is 50,000. So this is what I mean. And he'd read this, and he didn't sound like a Catholic to me. And he said that, I don't know what it was, maybe, I don't know what the article was. I've often written for this very widely circulated Jesuit magazine. And he said, do you have internet access in Haiti? This is about 10 years ago. I said, well, no, we don't have regular electricity, so how could we have internet access? But I learned a lot from this guy because he said, well, I'll help you do that. And he did. He actually came to Haiti, helped us get a satellite dish, showed us how to use it properly, and since that time, I have to say, we've always had internet access. Now, more recently, we put in high-speed internet access. And little did we know that this was the way in an area without telephones and without roads that a growing cluster of hospitals and clinics could stay in communication. Now you're thinking, has Paul lost his train of thought? He was talking about Concord. I have not. And so I went back to Haiti after giving this talk at the Kennedy School, but this fellow, who I will not name, from Arkansas, he gets something called Google Alert. Now, I found this very disturbing to hear that people could, quote-unquote, Google one another. It's not a verb that I found very appealing. And Google Alert, I didn't find much more appealing. And so the next day, I see something in the Lincoln Concord paper that, Google Alert. Now, the journalist who wrote this, I'll bet you, is here. If he were really brave, he'd raise his hand. I think it was a man. And he had been to this Kennedy School event. And I, of course, know that you guys have been forcing each other to read Kidder's book, which, by the way, I'd love to one day do a study of that, how a small community forces itself to read a book. But that's not my job tonight. So I've known all about this, and the first time I heard about it, I said, wow, that's really, that makes me feel very humble that everybody in the whole town, forcing children to read books I can see, but forcing each other to read books. And so the journalist, I know he's here somewhere. He's clearly not very brave. He said, Paul Farmer, he was really funny and not what I expected. And let's try to get this man, out to Concord before he leaves for Haiti. Now, as I told you, I'd already left for Haiti. I was there. But thanks to Marvin from Arkansas, I read this in Haiti the day it appeared in your paper. And I have to say, I've been looking forward to joining you for a long time, not just because of that article, but because I know that a number of my coworkers have been here, and I can see, I have myself have been to visit some of the schools in the area and to talk to students, for example, at Lincoln Sudbury. Some of you are from that town. And I know the impact that some of this effort, your effort, has had on our work. And the idea of a community call to action is very moving to me and to my coworkers at Partners in Health. As you were kind enough to say in introducing me and in the remarks made previously, if this is about me, well, then it's not a very auspicious kind of event, because I'm, just one guy working in a big movement. But if it's about all of you and about Concord and about the area around here, then it's very important, because, and the only formal remarks I'll make tonight, I guess none of my remarks are ever really formal, but the only remarks I'd like to make tonight are really about that question. What is it? If this is about you and not about me or even about Partners in Health, but about you, then what is the it? And that's what I'd like to ask tonight. What is the it? I came in contact with a family here some years ago, I think probably in 2001, and some of you know Becky Dewey and her family. And some of you met a patient from Haiti who was sponsored by people from Concord, meaning he was a guy who we met in rural Haiti who had a very serious congenital heart defect, or maybe he's fine now. Someone asked me today, how's Will Know? I said, I saw him last week, but I don't care anymore how he is because he's fine. So I saw him and said, hi. And for those of you who are physicians in the room, I said, hey, Will Know, what's your INR? Which, again, is about as polite as saying Paul Farmer infectious disease. So I was asking him, how thin is your blood? Which, again, is not a very nice greeting. And he told me 2.7. And I said, okay, bye. And some of you who met him because you worked on his care will be glad to know he's doing very well many years later. Anyway, that's how I got to know some of the people in this gymnasium tonight. I have to say, being from a very athletic family and being the only non-athletic person in said family, I have avoided gymnasiums for years. Gymnasia. And only you guys could bring me back into a gymnasium. When I was a kid, I remember my father forced me to play not just baseball, which was bad enough, but basketball. And I was the worst player on the team, so I developed this sort of internal phobia for gyms. But I'm getting over it thanks to Concord. Thank you all. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Father. Now, back to this Wilno story. That's how I got connected to Concord, but something very interesting has happened since then. This is just one guy. He's doing well. He can tell me his INR. By the way, it wasn't true that I said goodbye right afterwards. The next thing I asked him was something else. I said, and what is Romain's INR? Because unlike Wilno, who now works with us in the pharmacy, since he came back from being sponsored by you guys to have a big operation at the Brigham, which, by the way, the surgeons all waive their fees. I think the anesthesiologist waive their fees. And this gets back to the movement question. And the hospital really did its best. So it's not as if people on the team caring for Wilno at the Brigham did not also chip in. It wouldn't have happened, though, or not easily, if people here in this room and my colleague, Serena Koenig, hadn't taken the trouble to arrange it. Now, so Wilno is a guy who I think he'd been to junior high, maybe a little bit of high school. So when he got back to Haiti and had to be on a blood thinner every day, and some of you are on the same blood thinner right in this room, Coumadin, rat poison actually, so it's dangerous. You have to be very careful and monitor it. And it really is rat poison. It's warfarin. And again, I know some of you are on it because I know a little about the demographics of my home country, the United States. And it's hard to monitor. You have to make sure that your blood doesn't get too dilute, right? Because then you can have something horrible like a bleed. And if the blood isn't dilute enough, if you have in the case of Wilno, you get an artificial heart valve, a metal valve. Of course, a clot will form around it, and then in either case, the outcome would be terrible. So Wilno's lucky. He got a job. And as I said, I saw him a few days ago, and he was trotting up a hill after me, and I was huffing and puffing, so I know he's okay. But the other fellow I asked him about him had not gone to junior high school. I don't think he'd even gone to primary school. And when he came back from he actually had his surgery in Haiti. A team from Harvard and Harvard Haiti team did his surgery in Haiti. The same valve put in. Never been done in rural Haiti before, as far as I know. And he had to be on the same medicine. And he didn't have, when I say, of course, Wilno probably doesn't have he probably has a dirt floor and all sorts of problems, and he's living in poverty, but he has a job now at Partners in Health in Haiti. And this other guy had very few, he couldn't read and write, and I was worried about him in much more than I was about Wilno. And so I said to Wilno when he came back from Boston, and he actually had to come here twice, I said, this other guy who just had this surgery, who doesn't live in the same town, I want you to take responsibility for making sure his blood is thin but not too thin. And he said, well, Dr. Paul, what does that mean? I said, I don't care if you have to go to his house every day and check, and make sure that this is checked. I want you to do it. And he said, I will. So I asked him, every time I see him, I don't say, how's life? Someone asked me tonight, someone from Concord, who said, how's Wilno? Did he get married? I said, I don't know, but I know his INR. I know his blood is thin. And that's what I asked him about this other guy. Take responsibility for your neighbor. And Wilno said, not unlike the surgeons and anesthesiologists and people of Concord, said, yeah, we'll pay for his care while he's here. He said, okay, I'll do that. And he has done it. And it's been years now. It's been a couple of years. Every time I see him, that's always the second thing I ask him is, how's this other guy, who's really in much even worse straits than Wilno is. Now, the M word, movement. That's the word the it in the question. And I don't know from movements, as we say in New York. I came back from Haiti via New York, so I tried to gather all sorts of local cultural expressions. Like, I don't know from movements. New York's a great place. I don't know anything about movements. I know about medicine. I know about infectious diseases. I have friends from Partners in Health who are here tonight. We know about the work we're doing. I'm learning about, I certainly feel like I know a fair amount about Haiti. I'm trying to learn more about Rwanda and other places where we work. But movements, I don't know. Someone said to me even 10 years ago, which would be to say a good 10 or 15 years into doing this work, you guys have to get involved in building a healthcare movement or building a rights-based movement. I would have said, well, it's not what we do. We don't know anything about movements. We don't know how to organize the citizenry. In Concord, they love that word. We don't know how to organize the citizenry in our own countries. We know more about delivering care for people living in poverty who have serious diseases. I think that's what I would have said. I have actually one of my, I don't know where, she's back there somewhere, but one of my coworkers from Partners in Health has been around at least since we wrote that very extravagant mission statement. I love that mission statement. What were we thinking? An antidote to despair? Does it really say that in it? I don't know what we were drinking that night. But wouldn't it be great to be an antidote to despair? Wouldn't it be great to have a movement? Wouldn't it be great to engage people like even Will Know, this young fellow who benefited from your direct intervention? But what's even more beautiful in some ways is the fact that the surgeons and the anesthesiologists and the people of Concord got involved on principle. And that We'll Know then, when he got back to Haiti, got involved with another person in similar straits on principle. Because, I could have said, now I want you to do this, but I'm not around to police We'll Know's blood-thinning checking abilities. It's not what I do, and he knows that. The only reason that he could answer me, as he did when I asked him a few days ago, what's Gomez INR, is because he'd really checked it, and continues to check it years later. Now, these may seem very small examples. The one that involved people of Concord some years ago, or a family and a couple families here. But clearly, if you can fill, not me, but if you can fill an auditorium in, what night is it again? What day is it? Where am I? I know I'm in Concord. Actually, I'm a native of Massachusetts, so this is my 555. Here we are on the 5th of May, and we filled a whole auditorium of people who are coming to talk about healthcare as a human right. That strikes me as a community call to action. That strikes me as very significant. And I think some of you will be relieved to know that I do not take it as some sort of personal compliment, but rather as, again, a statement about people living around here and what it might mean to you and to others involved, including students, involved in something much broader. And in this case, I'm talking about a movement. Now, this is pretty grand stuff to think, a little organization like Partners in Health, which, by the way, I'm learning is not so little anymore. But this is pretty grand stuff to start thinking about one patient, a guy named We'll Know, say, someone named Becky Dewey from Concord, and then start talking about movements. But I would like to recall, as my formal example of the evening, and I think I may have said this at the Kennedy School, and at least a couple of you were there, because it wasn't too long ago. Where's that cowardly photographer, that journalist? Reveal yourself. Actually, I love the article. How about if I say it that way? I did love the article. It made me laugh in the middle of rural Haiti. But right before I went back to, right before that night, I had been traveling, as I mentioned. I think I actually mentioned at Lauren Walters' house earlier, not tonight. I had gone to Rwanda. It's another Concord connection. I'm not going to go into detail, but it's another family from around here that said, yeah, we'll support Partners in Health in Rwanda. I mean, someone would have said 10 years ago, you will be working in Rwanda, and a family from Concord or the area will help you, or Belmont or wherever. I would have said, we're not working in Rwanda. We don't have the time or energy. We're too busy in Haiti. How are we going to do that? And yet here we are. I had just gone from Rwanda to Haiti, central Haiti. And let me tell you, there are no direct flights from central Haiti to central Rwanda. So, and I had this very interesting experience. And I'm not sure I've told it to anyone in this detail, but, you know, it's 2 days, by the way, to get there. That trajectory was Rwanda, Pretoria, London, Boston, Miami, Port-au-Prince. And you know, I have a bad back, I have to tell you. And so by the time I got back, I said, you know, I was in Haiti, and then I had 3.5 hours to go in a Jeep. So you think I'm whining. But, and I was so tired from this trip, I wanted only to be, you know, alone and to hear nothing, and just to go to sleep. So I live in a very small house in Haiti. But again, you know, I have water in my house. I have running water. By the way, I noticed, Lauren, that you have running water in your house, too, here in Concord. But I feel lucky to have, you know, a house with a clean cement floor. But it's very small. And I opened the door, you know, with my bag. I've been living out of a suitcase for at least 2 weeks. Been in Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa. And I love being in Rwanda, I have to tell you. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to stop soon and so that we can talk. But I had loved being, you don't believe me, do you? You think I'm going to keep talking. I heard that cackle over there. And I just wanted to, you know, go to sleep. And I opened the door of my very small house, and there was a patient, a former patient of mine. And I thought, you know, she had been a kid, and she came to our hospital with a horrible disease called multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis. And we had this hard-won experience treating it. This is several years ago. And she was very young. She was definitely the youngest patient we had. She was a teenager. And after a year of treatment, in which she was horrible side effects, everything, I said to her, Natasha, sounds like a Russian name, only in Haiti. Anyway, so I said, Natasha, you have to go home now. You can get the rest of your treatment at home. She said, but I'm an orphan. And I said, yeah, but of course you are an orphan, aren't you? And then I of course, I had, you know, known her that by then for a year. That I designed her treatment regimen. I had been seeing her regularly. She was very chipper and happy, and very funny. And you forget that I forgot that she was an orphan. I mean, that sounds terrible to confess in front of 1,000 of my closest friends, but I forgot that she was an orphan. So then I said to her, well, you know, you still have to go back to high school because, you know, at your age, you know, you've already gone through these classes, and just because you have this tuberculosis, unlike Thoreau, I didn't say unlike Thoreau, but you're cured. You're going to be cured. She still had another probably 6 to 8 months of treatment to go. So I said, you have to. She said, I want to stay here. I don't have a family. I don't want to leave the hospital. I said, but Natasha, you've gained 30 pounds. You know, you're smart. You're funny. You can't live in a hospital. You know, and she said, but I have nowhere to go. I don't have a mother. I don't have a father. And I could have said, yes, I know, that's the definition of orphan, but I didn't. I said, you have to go to high school. So I had a friend who was a priest in another town, a Haitian priest, and I said, I went to see him. About an hour and a half away is the closest high school. It was then. Now we have a high school in this village. And I went to see him, and I said, you know, there's this really bright, lovely girl, and, you know, she's an orphan, and she has TB, but she's been doing very well on therapy, and she really needs to go back to high school. And so he said, yeah, she can stay here, and so she did. And you know, I saw her very frequently back then because we were just starting. Actually, Serena Koenig, who many of you met, was working in this town and was keeping an eye on her too. So this was years ago. And now, again, back to the guy from Arkansas. So what do you think happened after we introduced the internet to Central Haiti? I started getting email from people like Natasha. In fact, I got one yesterday. I haven't read it yet. But here I am back from Rwanda. Again, you think I've lost my train of thought, but I haven't. And I'm getting back. I don't want to see anyone. And then I hear a familiar giggle on the other side of my own door. I say, who's in my house? And there was my sister-in-law, who was a nurse anesthetist and a very quiet person. I could, you know, if I go back, you know, and she's there, I know that all she'll say to me is, would you like some coffee? That's about it. That's what she says in the morning. That's what she says at night. Works out fine. So I wasn't worried about seeing her after 2 days of continuous travel and 1 month of continuous talk in Africa. But then I hear this giggling voice, and I thought, oh my God, it's Natasha. She never shuts up. So I open the door, and, she gives me this big hug. She calls me father, of course. It's only fair. After all, she doesn't have a father. So I say, how are you, Natasha? How are you feeling? I don't say, are you coughing, blood, or anything. I used to say that. It's kind of like saying, we'll know what's your INR. But I have curbed myself on this. I do not say, hey, Natasha, you coughing up blood? So it's not appropriate for high school students. So so I said, how are you? And she said, oh, you must be so tired. I said, yeah, I am. Anyway, so the next thing is, boom, I'm out for the count. The next morning I wake up. Of course, my sister-in-law says to me, the only thing she ever says to me, you want some coffee? I said, sure, that'd be great. And it's a little bit before Easter now. And the next thing I know, Natasha's still there. She wakes up, and she's, this is a very small house. And she says, good morning. I said, good morning. I'm thinking, she talks so much, I'm never going to recover from this trip to Rwanda. But again, she's an orphan. I can't say this. So the next day was Easter Sunday. Well, there's got to be a secular way of saying that in Concord. The next day was a high holiday for... Now, anyway. So, Natasha, my sister-in-law, get up in the morning. Would you like some coffee? Yes, we all have coffee. We go to church. And I had been so discouraged about coming back from Rwanda to see Haiti in the grip of so much violence. I didn't tell you that part. Because it makes me sad to tell you that I went the road from the worst part of that trip was not the 10-hour flight from South Africa to London. It was that 3-hour stretch from Port-au-Prince to central Haiti where there's so many heavily armed people and so many guns. And after leaving Rwanda, for heaven's sake, to feel that you'd left a sanctuary and gone back to this very dangerous place. And I was so discouraged. And I really had been reading about what happened in Rwanda Easter 1994, which is a horrible story. I'm not going to recount it to you, but you can look it up yourself or read about it yourself. And it was, Easter Sunday. It's supposed to be, about hope and about lots of good things. And I was feeling so discouraged, I have to tell you, and thinking, I am so worried about Haiti and our work here and the violence. And I said, I'm not going to go to work today. Now, some of you also didn't go to work on a Sunday, but I often will go see patients on a Sunday, especially after I've been gone for a long time. And I said, I don't want to. And I left church early and went right back, and I picked up a book about the M word, about a movement. And this was a book that someone had gotten into my bags on that Pretoria, London, Boston, Miami, Port-au-Prince trip, someone from my office. Someone from Partners in Help. And it was called Bury the Chains. And it was a book by Adam Hochschild about the movement to ban the slave trade. And it starts out in the late 18th century in England. And it ends, actually the book ends, and Haiti's very centrally involved, remember that. But it's a very uplifting story about a movement. It starts out with the epiphany of a small number of people. That's true. And the author, who's a gifted writer like Kidder is, focuses on those people. But the real story is not about individuals. It never is if it's about a movement. It's got to be about the citizenry. It's got to be about large-scale efforts to change something. And so it is in this story. And of all things to read on that Easter Sunday, just a month ago, after this long trajectory from a place that seemed to me idyllic, which is, I know, wrong, but compared to Haiti, and return home to some place that was, again, to get to my house and to this hospital, you had to go through a veritable thicket of arms. This book was a wonderful experience. I recommend that you all read it. And especially those of you who are, again, need a little bit of bolstering and have, as all of us do, dark days. By the end of that night, I had finished the book. And Natasha was going, in and out. She was saying things like, oh, look, a tree frog. I said, yeah. Anyway, and I kept on reading. But by the end of that evening, I felt much better And I realized that it was about the M word. It was about the fact that here, the end of the slave trade, the abominable slave trade, was done by ordinary people like us. Because I tell you, when you go back to Haiti after a trip like that, and you see, yes, we have a hospital. Yes, we saw 900,000 patients last year. Yes, we're proud of our work. But you don't feel extraordinary if you go through a thicket of weapons on the way home. Or if you see, as I did Saturday, the day before Easter, someone who was shot by those arms and did not survive. That was the day before Easter. And so you don't feel extraordinary, but movements are extraordinary. And this movement to end the slave trade was about people like us, people like you, people in England largely. This is where the movement gathered shape. There was the story in Hawkshaw's book is about a young Episcopalian, 25 years old, who writes. He went to Cambridge, I think, and was in seminary. Maybe he didn't even go to Cambridge. You know him, Thomas Clarkson. And I'd heard of him before, but I never read the whole story. And he wrote a Latin essay. Why? To win the prize. He wanted to win the Latin prize. The subject was incidental to him, he practically confesses. Now, we Catholics are better at confessing, but he did okay. And the topic was slavery. And on the way back from London, to London, he was riding his horse. And he said, I tried to be happy about my future as a cleric. I tried to be happy that I just won England's most famous essay prize in Latin. And all I could think about was the topic of my essay, slavery. And he said, can this be true? Meaning, can his own essay be true? And he said, it was true. And he got off his horse at a place, I think, called Wade's Mill. He got off his horse. Horse must have been thinking, what is wrong with this guy? And he just sat there and got up and he walked in the woods. He couldn't get back on the horse and go to London. And he said, can this be true? You know, that we are selling our fellow humans like chattel? And he knew the answer was yes. And then he said, well, someone must do something about this. A year later, less than a year later, small number of people, a lot of them Quakers, including this young man, started a movement that at points in its history of 60 years in that country, that empire, that slave-based empire, included hundreds of thousands of signatories to petitions. And when they delivered a petition back then, maybe true today, to the House of Parliament, you interrupt the session. They interrupted session after session with these giant scrolls with hundreds of thousands, not thousands, hundreds of thousands of names on them. From Birmingham, from Nottingham, from all these places, from Scotland and Ireland, people by the thousands would fill up public spaces and churches to hear these people talk. And then the women's movement got involved and really said, why not stop, not just the slave trade, we have to stop slavery, period. And that and the Haitian Revolution led to the end of British slavery in the New World. And to read that in the middle of hearing, the giggling Natasha, who, thank God, has recovered completely, and to be in Haiti, and I'll stop here, but to read about a movement really gave me a faith in our work. And I feel that that's what you give us, you the people of Concord and the I've met people come here from Bowdoin, Maine tonight, but if Partners in Health, which was started as an idea, we never thought we'd end up in Rwanda and Siberia and Roxbury and Dorchester and Mattapan and seeing a million patients in Haiti. We didn't have that kind of grand vision. But now we do have that kind of grand vision, and it's because we're borrowing your enthusiasm and your support. And I don't just mean financial support, although we can't do the work without financial support. Let's be honest. You can't treat someone with one of these diseases without the tools of the trade. But you can't make an effort like ours into a movement without everybody being on board. And when I went back, I missed something which occurred on that Saturday where I had a very bad day. I told you why. Dealing with gunshot wounds, especially ineptly, as we did, is never it's a very discouraging thing. But I think it was that day that, or right around that day, that the Walk for Haiti was organized, mostly by a small handful of students from Lincoln Sudbury High School. And if I'm not mistaken, and my colleagues from Partners in Health can tell me, I believe those students organized a large number of people to walk, and they raised $50,000. And that's the sort of thing I mean by a movement. They didn't do this because I went to Lincoln Sudbury High School. They did it last year. I just went to Lincoln Sudbury High School this spring. They did this because there are people there who organized the student body and the teachers and the citizenry to be involved. And so I want to close. I'm trying to decide if you're clapping because I said I want to close, or for the students of Lincoln Sudbury. But I want to close on an upbeat note. By the way, the good news is that Natasha was only there on Easter vacation. Actually, I have to say, the brief minute of splenetic feeling I had evaporated because she really is funny, and she's cured, you know. What could cheer you up more after a bad day than seeing someone, a young person, cured? But it's the movement we need, and I want to thank you all for what you've done already for Partners in Health, obviously with the capital P-I-H, that is our work, but also with the small case letters. All of us are partners in health, and by health I mean education and basic rights that every human should have. That won't happen because of a small NGO that is getting bigger. Even if we do work in Rwanda and Siberia and Mexico and Haiti and Boston, it still won't happen. It can only happen when everybody feels involved, just because, again, we're human. Thank you very much, and I look forward to a conversation.